Hello and welcome to our May 15th, 2026 Freshet Friday podcast. It's hard to believe we're at the middle of the month already and approaching what I hope will be a wonderful Victoria Day long weekend for everyone. I'm your host, Geof Wheelwright, and with me on the podcast this week are the veteran journalists and founders of Freshet News, Janice Clue, Teresa McManus, and Mario Bartel, with their take on the latest news from Burnaby, New Westminster, and the Tri-Cities. Welcome back, team.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jess.
Jeff.
So, I wanted to start with some sad news with the sudden loss of a local legend. And this one strikes close to home. It's only 1 week after we featured a story about an effort to get a statue created in honor of 93-year-old hockey icon Ernie "Punch" McLean, who now we're talking about his unexpected passing. Mario, you jumped on this story last weekend. Can you tell us more about it?
Well, it took quite a tragic turn. I mean, we talked about Ernie in our podcast last week. We were fresh off the press conference in which a group called the Ernie Punch McLean Legacy Foundation announced its intentions to try and get support and finances to erect a statue of Punch in front of Queen's Park Arena or somewhere near Queen's Park Arena. And everyone was feeling good, pretty good. I mean, there was some wonderful things said about Punch at the event. He was there, although I wasn't. And but I'd read some reports and seen some social media. And he's a vibrant for a 93-year-old guy. He still goes to the gym. He still gets around. One of the things that Patrick Singh, who's a director of the foundation and was sort of one of the leaders of this effort to get the statue built. He told me when I talked to him prior that, the time's running out. I mean, 93-year-old, you don't know how long you've got. They wanted to try and get this thing going. Oh, we still had Punch, and he could see how much people appreciated and cherished his role in hockey and in the community, and for the things he's done over the years. Many of which we talked about last week. I don't think anyone expected that time was 2 days. And so I happened to be in Ontario on Friday and just got back from a Toronto Blue Jays game. It was around midnight, and I logged onto the computer just to kind of catch up with emails and things. And I saw a post on Twitter or X from Farhan Lalji, who hosted Wednesday's event, a TSN broadcaster, New West resident, saying that, that Punch McLean had died. And I sort of did a double take and looked at some of the follow-up, and the post was only about 20 minutes old. So, it was midnight Toronto time, so 9:00 here. And there's a few comments, but, obviously not, people aren't married to, they're glued to their computers on a Friday evening. And so I started searching around for more information, found nothing. Although I did have this email from, we get RCMP emails from their news desk, and there was one there from Dees Lake, which I hadn't paid any attention to at first because it's not our area and don't generally cover anything up there. So I spent about an hour searching around the internet and finding out anything I could, try and get some kind of confirmation, and came up dry. So I went to bed and got up early the next morning, and things were starting to trickle in. People were going on social media, and I reached out to Patrick Singh and to try and get some sort of confirmation from him. And he did post something on Facebook about losing Punch. I mentioned it was a car accident, and started to piece little bits of information together, and it sort of glommed on. Well, this happened up in Dees Lake. So obviously after Wednesday's event, he has a mining stake up there. He's loves the North Country and the wilderness and goes panning for gold or prospecting for gold, and he spends a lot of time up there. And I guess that's where he went. And tragically, his car went off the road and then down an embankment, and he did not survive that collision. And it's tragic, but in another way, like as Patrick said, they wanted to let him know how much he was loved and appreciated and cherished in the community, and the stories he'd brought over the years. And it's always a mixed thing when you put together a story of someone who's met their end perhaps sooner than they should have, and you start to find how much people say about him and what they say and the things they remember. And going around social media as Saturday morning went along, and finding comments from players who used to play for him, and other people in the sports circles and just in the community circles too. it was kind of nice. And, not many of us get to go out with an event trying to get a statue built in your memory. And Ernie had that opportunity. And last Wednesday, people were at Queen's Park Arena talking about what they remembered about Ernie and saying great things about him. Uh, you'd like to think that it wasn't a was his time hadn't yet come. Clearly, he's a vibrant guy for 93, still going to the gym, still going prospecting. But he went knowing that he was indeed loved and remembered and thought of fondly in the community, even though he was could be an irascible old guy uh, his opposition teams coming into Queen's Park Arena would quake at the prospect of playing the big bad Bruins under his direction. But he was given that opportunity to know where he stood amongst the people he guided through their hockey careers and people in the sporting community whose lives he touched, and that's kind of a neat thing when you step back and think about it.
Yeah, it seems like he lived his life his way, really right until the end. I mean, what he was doing when he passed was part of what he loved doing.
Absolutely, but the strange hand of fate reaching down, after that, and it's probably one of the most incredible things I've ever come across in my career. You do a story about somebody and everything seems great. You don't think about it again, and then 2 days later, you're essentially writing an obituary. It's pretty crazy sometimes.
Yeah, it's wonderful that he got to hear all of those things that everyone said at that event last week.
Well, and it's just so and it's just so ironic too because he's had a couple of brushes with death already in his life. And he had a plane crash that lost his eye when he was a younger man, and when he was 77, he got lost in the bush while he was up prospecting for gold, he survived 4 days and 5 nights in the wild with no food or supplies with him, walking around with in a semi daze, and everyone had written him off then, and he came back for another 16 years, I guess we all our number comes up eventually, and it's just kind of a crazy situation. Maybe it sort of epitomizes the kind of character he was too, that it would be such a crazy, unexpected situation.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Mario. And on a lighter note, we have a story about Bunsen Lake from Janice. And if you want to take a dip at Bunsen Lake, you'll need to dive into your smartphone or computer first, at least if you want to park there. So as of this week, you'll need to use an online parking reservation system at the lake. And Janice, you want to tell us about that?
This is the 5th year that BC Hydro has done this with Bunsen Lake. It is to control the crowds. It is a very popular area, especially with out-of-towners, and the crowds can get quite busy for the village of Admore. So it is specifically to help the village, but it is also to control the people and the parking spots because they're not there's a lot, but they have to be allocated. So this year they're going to have an online system. It started on Wednesday and it goes until after Labor Day. And they're going to generate a QR code for you once you register. And you have to present this. This year, it's new. You have to present it when you come to the reservoir and show your pass through your QR code. This is kind of a controversial thing for Tri City residents because it's right in their backyard. Why do we have to register? But of course, it is so popular. It's just a wonderful area to go hiking, to go take your dog. There's an off leash area for small dogs and for big dogs, and it's a great place to go boating and take your kids. So anyway, that has started as of Wednesday, and you can go to bchydro.com/Petzl to register.
Yeah, I have been to Bunsen Lake many times, and it's a wonderful place to swim. But I'm wondering, so is it kind of like first come, first served? Like, can you only buy it on the day, or can you like do these reservations in advance? How does that work?
It opens up at 7 a.m. the day before.
Okay,
Yeah, and what they're asking is if you can't make it, make sure you cancel on the reservation line because that spot can be taken by somebody else.
right, right. Okay, well, thank you for that, Janice. Um, and there's also a couple of cool stories this week about new school and recreation center developments in both New West and Coquitlam, with stories from Teresa and Janice. So, Teresa, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, there's a story that I've been working on. It's about Lord Tweedsmuir Elementary School here in New Westminster. And the New Westminster School District has had a long-standing challenge with addressing its capacity issues. There are numerous portables. I mean, schools are just packed. And the plan that's sort of come out within the last couple of weeks is that they're going to consider a business case for taking down the existing Lord Tweedsmuir Elementary School in the West End and building 2 brand new schools on there. Now, they haven't said what types of schools those would be, whether it would be elementary, middle, or high schools. And one of the sort of the interesting aspects of this is that the students are it's being proposed that they would go to Stride Elementary in Burnaby. So all of the Tweedsmuir kids would be going there while construction of the 2 new schools takes place on that site in New Westminster. Needless to say, I've talked to a couple of parents this week, and they are not happy, very concerned. Everybody pretty much agrees that, they all support the need for more schools. There's some concerns, though, that students are gonna have to be transported to a different school district across the border. It's not too far, but it's in a different municipality. But also that Stride itself there's a new Stride school that the province had funded because the existing school is not seismically sound. So parents are very concerned that their children are going to be sent to a school that's being closed because it wasn't deemed to be safe. Yeah, so lots of conversations happening in the community about this. I know that some of the folks at Tweedsmuir, they kind of feel that their kids are the sacrificial lambs, as they've said, for the district's need, which no one disagrees with, to address the capacity crisis. Um, but what's sort of the early plans is that it could be an educational hub that would have between 2,000 and 2,300 students on that site where Tweedsmuir is right now. And I believe, from what I've been told, there's about 400 and some odd students at that school. So, in addition to the concerns about sending the kids to Burnaby, there's also concerns about what that will mean, having a campus of that magnitude on 8th Avenue there, with that many kids there. Um, it's a real conundrum because, again, no one disputes that the district needs to do something. I did talk to the board chair, Cheryl Sluice, and they're just trying to work through this and take actions to make sure that families are it, aware of what the plan is. But they, at this point, don't have a lot of the answers because they're just working on the business case. At this stage, they can't, like I say, they can't even tell the parents what kinds of schools. Which then again, Tweedsmuir families are saying, is it even going to be an elementary school? So if it's not, then where are we going to go? So um, yeah, it's a challenging one.
And is there a timeline for when all this is going to get decided?
The plan as it is right now is that the students will be in Tweedsmuir for the next school year, and then come 2027, they would be relocated to Stride while construction takes place on their, yeah. But, as Cheryl, the board chair, did say, she said, right now in New Westminster, there's 1,100 students that are in portables, and the high school itself is 500 students over capacity, and that is just a few years old. So, when I asked her what this would mean in terms of portables, she said this plan would eliminate the need for portables. There would be no more portables in New Westminster, and it should accommodate growth for at least a few years. So, would we like to see the end of portables? I think probably everybody would, but just this particular, there's some details associated with this that have got some folks really upset.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Teresa. And Janice, I know that there's some school redevelopment happening in Coquitlam.
This is a good news story. About, I would say October 2023. a school in Port Coquitlam called Hazel Trembath Elementary, named after a teacher. It burned down. Police believe an arsonist torched it. As a result, several hundred children um, have had to be bused to a different location in Coquitlam, which is uh, a ways away for them. These are just little kids, and it's quite traumatic when you see your elementary school burn down, and then you have to relocate for 3 or 4 years. In this case, the city of Port Coquitlam will be issuing building permits quite shortly to the School District 43 to get Hazel Trembath rebuilt. They are saying that the permitting and construction timelines to get this school rebuilt are among the fastest in the province. In fact, the fastest in the province for a turnaround for a full scale build. And it's 4 years. It'll be 4 years by the time it opens. So fall of 2027 is when Hazel Trembath will reopen. It is a $39 million school. It comes with all the bells and whistles in terms of being environmentally friendly. 2 kindergarten classrooms, 8 elementary school classrooms, a neighborhood learning center with future childcare spaces, and the EV stations for the staff. So this is really moving now after a lot of protests from the parents, from the kids, from the city. There's been a lot of pressure to get this built as soon as possible to make sure the kids are taken care of.
That's fantastic. That is a good news story. And you have another good news story about a recreation center?
I do. This was a great story. It is a story that has been a long time coming, I believe. Had they stuck with the original timelines, the community center would have been built by now. It is a $150 million rec center on a mountain with views of Mount Baker. Imagine yourself, Jeff, sitting in the hot tub and enjoying the view that you see late at night in the summer of Mount Baker. It is just going to be a spectacular recreation center.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And they're going to have a little park beside it as well. And that is the first phase of this commercial space for Burke Mountain. The rest of it is currently there's about 20,000 residents live there. There's hardly any commercial. So this recreation center will spur the village, the commercial core of Burke Mountain, which will be the next step for 50,000 people in this neighborhood.
Wow. Well, that is exciting. Cornelia Naylor is joining us with an update on the ever-evolving Burnaby Hospital redevelopment story. So, Cornelia, I see that you have a story this week about the implications of the cancellation of the next phase of the Burnaby Hospital redevelopment, particularly around what happens around a somewhat expensive canceled contract. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, since our last episode aired, Fraser Health got back to me about a question that I'd asked. I wanted to know how much money had been spent during the alliance development stage. That's the stage from the time this contract for phase 2 was signed in June 2024 until it was canceled last month. And so they got back to me. They said $50 million had been spent during that time. That's both operational and capital expenses. And Fraser Health told me that this money was spent on design work, site investigation, subcontracting fees, staffing, office lease, and expenses. Now, the infrastructure critic, Misty Van Popta, with the BC Conservatives, said that that money is going to go out the window. But Fraser Health reassures me that all work completed to date will be carried forward to inform future plans, unquote, and that they'll be reviewed and refreshed to make sure they're up to date. Of course, this project isn't on the province's 3-year capital plan, and they may be a bit stale 3 years from now. That's the concern anyway. Also in that story that I posted since we last aired, I got a chance to pose questions to Premier David Eby, who was in town for a school playground announcement. He says he's committed to delivering this project. He says he knows how important it is, that he's committed to delivering it. But he said that the project had gone off the rails, quote unquote. And when I asked him how they could delay the project and save money without cutting services, he said, well, that's the work of the infrastructure ministry, and said, there's a lot of work to be done, but he believes that it can be done. Burnaby Mayor Mike Hurley was dubious in a post on the city's website. He said he noted that construction costs tend to go up over time, and he figured that delaying the project for cost savings seems like it would turn out the opposite. This is just a story that keeps on developing. For example, last night at the Burnaby City Council meeting, mayor and council are continuing to keep on the pressure. They passed a motion formally calling on the government to immediately resume phase 2 and publicly confirm that the funds that were approved are being protected so that they don't go into general revenue, that they stay connected to this phase 2 of the Burnaby Hospital redevelopment. And they're also calling on the province to provide residents with a written, clear and public construction commencement timeline. Also, another bit of information that's come out is Fraser Health got back to me too on a question I'd asked whether there had been any layoffs related to the cancellation of this contract. And indeed, there have been. 9 people have been let go. Fraser Health says that, first of all, reassures me that they're not frontline staff. I don't know that I would have thought that they would be. But he says that, I'm talking about a communications person, but Fraser Health said, quote, Fraser Health Capital team remains in place and will continue to work on the project moving forward, unquote. And I'm sure there will be more to come on this project. I'll keep digging and find out. And I'm sure City Council and various other groups like the Burnaby Hospital Foundation will continue to keep the pressure on to see that this phase 2 gets built.
Great. Thanks for that, Cornelia. Okay, well, I am now going to turn to our Freshet 911 segment. And first up is Cornelia, who has a story about a Surrey man who allegedly held a knife to the throat of a flagger on Burnaby on Monday. And he's been charged with assault with a weapon and breach of probation. Cornelia, do you want to tell us about that?
Well, there was a kind of a scary 911 item. It turned out that there have been charges announced against a person for allegedly holding a knife to the throat of a flagger in Burnaby. So it was actually the Vancouver police that put out this press release. They said that Burnaby RCMP responded to the reports of this man holding the knife to the flagger's throat. This was in the Metrotown area near Olive Avenue and Central Boulevard. The man, however, boarded a SkyTrain before police got there, but a description was forwarded, and 2 hours later, officers in Vancouver spotted a man closely matching the description of the suspect. And upon arrest, officers turned up a hunting-style knife. And now a Surrey resident named Derek Whitebear, 42 years old, has been charged with assault with a weapon and breach of probation. He remains in custody.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Cornelia. Now we're going to turn to you, Janice, for a fun story about the upcoming Pechakucha talk and a new rule that they're implementing around politicians speaking there.
Maybe not a new rule, it's just a new model coming into the election. Pechakucha, New Westminster, is well known amongst the Freshet News family because Mary Wartell spoke at the last one. For this one, we've got 10 candidates running for election from the 2 parties in New Westminster. Everybody's going to be there except for the mayoralty candidate, Danielle Fontaine, but Mayor Patrick Johnstone will be speaking. This is Pechakucha is translated as chit-chat in Japanese, and it's 20 slides over 20 seconds, and it keeps the energy and the pace level very fast. This event is taking place on Saturday, May 23rd, and the candidates are not allowed to talk about their campaigns or why they're running. They're only allowed to talk about themselves, their hobbies, their families, whatever they want, but they can't mention anything to do with the election. So this should be a fun event. Very interesting to see what they're going to say. It's going to be at the Sapperton Community Hall on, again, Saturday, May 23rd.
Wow. So, Maria, do you have any advice for these people?
Speak off the cuff.
That sounds like good advice. Thank you, Maria. Also, this weekend, it's Victoria Day, and it's a long weekend. So we get a little extra time to get out and have some fun. And I know there's lots going on. Janice, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, just a couple of things. The city of Coquitlam has its annual citywide garage sale, which is great for hunting for treasures. That takes place on Saturday, May 16th and on May 17th. I also want to mention on May 16th in Port Moody, there is a theater called Inlet Theater. It's attached to the city hall. It tends to get a lot of acts that are like tribute bands. I'm not sure why this is a this is a great location for them, but they sure love the theater venue. There's a new one, a new band that's coming to play on May 16th. It's called Grind. It is a Alice in Chains tribute band. I love my grunge. I'm going to be there. If anyone wants to join me, this is a new band. And it's being organized by Dave Shannon, who is a longtime Coquitlam resident. And that takes place at 7:30 at Inlet Theater.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, well, we're going to turn to our favorite stories of the week. And maybe, Teresa, do you want to start us off?
As I mentioned earlier, the folks at Lord Tweedsmuir are, having a bit of a challenging time. But I was out there on Wednesday for a fun assignment, and the library there has a new area, and it's called Fired Up for Football, and they got this through a grant from the city. And so they've got a bunch of books that are related to football, or as we would call it, soccer. And also the $1,000 grant helped them get some much needed equipment such as goalie gloves, and they have a soccer program that they do there that just sounds like a total blast. Tweedsmuir Champions League, and this year's recently announced winner was the Barking Bulldogs. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. There was kids and just a lot of smiling faces. So it's a bit of a different kind of vibe from some of the stuff I've been working on. So I really, really enjoyed doing that one.
Thanks, Teresa. How about you, Mario?
We had a story yesterday in the paper, our center spread feature, about a bit of a early sneak preview of the new Jim Pattison acute care tower at Royal Columbian Hospital. We've been trying to get in there for quite some time, but they recently had an opening for the genetic imaging center in the emergency department, and Teresa and I were able to go, and they did tours of some of the other floors, including the surgical wing, and it's pretty fascinating to be in a hospital. It still has that new hospital smell. There's some of the things still aren't quite in place, and we haven't got an official date yet for the grand opening of the hospital when they'll be getting some of their first patients, but some crazy innovative technology there, things that you never think of, like ultraviolet lights in the operating rooms. When everyone leaves the operating room, ultraviolet lights automatically come on and enhance the sterilization process for those rooms. And as soon as the door opens again, the lights come off and it's white light again. We got to look at the Da Vinci robot surgical machine that will allow doctors to do operations just looking through a viewfinder, and the little precise machines. I told Teresa it kind of looked at like that in one of the Toy Story movies, where the next door neighbor builds all these crazy toys out of putting things together. It looked like something like that, with all these little mechanical arms that would be manipulated by the surgeons over at a remote console. But probably about the best thing of that evening was being able to park without worry. Plenty of parking spots, no charge. It was great. It was the most luxurious visit you could ever imagine to a hospital.
Now, is that just no charge for Mario, or is that no charge for anybody?
Well, no, it's not open yet. So, for this event, they weren't, the meters weren't running.
Well, you've done it now, Mario, because I have seen some folks on social media complaining that there's a nice parking lot there and folks aren't allowed to park in it. Now you've gone and got them all mad because we got to park there.
There's
It's just
nothing
one
like
night
parking.
only.
There's nothing like parking issues to boil the blood of locals.
I don't know if you've ever served on any community association. I have, and it's always about people, parking, and pets. Those are the three big things. If you're on a strata council or anything. So yeah, that rings true. So Janice, how about you? What's your favorite story this week?
On Tuesday, I did attend the opening, the groundbreaking of the new recreation center. Like I said, this is a $150 million building that they are putting up. But prior to the politicians speaking, we did have a blessing from the Coquitlam First Nation counselor, John Peters. And he brought such meaning to this event. Uh, he gave a talk about reconciliation and how they're giving they shared their blessing about getting the new building constructed. And as he was talking, two eagles were flying and they were intersecting
Wow.
the sky, and it was just the most beautiful thing. So anyway, I am looking forward to going into this pool. I am looking forward to seeing the view. I'm looking forward to seeing the new library branch, which will be the third for Coquitlam, and it's the first attached to a recreation center in Coquitlam. So there's a lot of exciting things happening on Brook Mountain, and this was just the start.
That sounds great. Thank you for that. And Cornelia, what was your favorite story this week?
Well, I got to write a story about a longtime Burnaby pharmacist. She just got an award from the BC Pharmacy Association for her mentorship work over 3 decades. So this is Bernice Lamb. She was the owner of the PharmaSave on Hastings, right in the heart of the Burnaby Heights neighborhood. She and her husband, who's also a pharmacist, owned that PharmaSave between 2007 and 2011. Bernice told me that they retired, they sold it to spend more time with their kids. Imagine having two parents running a pharmacy. You're not going to see them a lot. She told me about the work she's done working with new pharmacists, young pharmacists, and work she also does with the Burnaby School District work experience program people, and that she's even encouraged some of those or inspired some of those high schoolers to get into pharmacy. It was interesting hearing what makes the work of a pharmacist meaningful, especially one of the things, it was just so specific, was that when people have a heart attack or a stroke, they go into the hospital not being on any medications, and they come out being on 6. Pharmacist that helps them to, make that journey into taking those medications properly and becoming their best selves post-stroke, that kind of thing. Anyway, I just say it was fun to talk to somebody who is passionate about passing on her experience to the next generation.
All right, and my favorite story this week is actually one that was in our opinion section, and it was from Tim Hicks talking about Century House. And one of the things that I really wasn't aware of was the fact that Century House is one of very few seniors facilities in Canada to actually have a volunteer component that runs a substantial number of the facility's activities and events. And I just think that's very cool, that this is an organization or a facility that's kind of core to this community, and it's actually the community that actually runs a lot of it. So I think that's just kind of inspiring and quite cool. Well, that wraps up another Freshet Friday podcast, but we'll be back soon. And we just came out in print yesterday, so get your copy today at your regular Freshet News distribution point. In the meantime, keep asking yourself the question, is it Freshet Friday yet? And come on back when the answer is yes. Thanks to our team for being here. Thanks for listening, and have a great long weekend.